All right, today what we're going to do is a copy of a Monet. I'm actually going to do a piece of a Monet still life painting. I'm going to work on a white canvas just to get the same way in which most Impressionists work. This is actually a piece of a larger painting. It's pretty famous, actually. There's a lot of beautiful things that are happening in this still life. For instance, there's green and red right there. So I'm definitely interested in seeing if I can learn from that. And that's really the way in which I tackle still life painting or a master copy, is what do I want to learn from it. So I think I'm going to go here in this one, see if I get some of that red green, and then there's a bit more reflected light than I normally would do right there, so that one feels more natural to me. So I'm going to go here and just see if I can get some of the good qualities that Monet got in this painting. Here, just a canvas panel. Of course, not the best thing to paint on, but this is not going anywhere. This is for my benefit. I'm not going to try to sell it. I wouldn't recommend anyone selling master copies anyway. I'm going to be faithful to his palette. He mostly used lead white. So I've got titanium right here, but I've also got some Kremnitz white here, which is really lead or flake white, and I'm going to put it right in the back there. It's actually a kind of a thicker white. It's generally described as ropey. Of course, depending on how it's made, stack lead white would probably be closer to the Dutch method. This is a little bit more manufactured, similar to titanium, but it's actually going to yellow a little bit more than titanium white. Next we have chrome yellow. I'm going to use cad lemon. I do have chrome yellow, but it's one of those colors that, very, very similar to cadmium lemon. Chrome yellow is actually a lead-based chrome yellow, so I don't think it's all that big of a deal. Very hard to find. There's a few manufacturers that make it. I'm going to use cadmium yellow, which would be the cad yellow medium here. You can see that's just going to tip a little bit more towards, I guess you could say the warmer side, even though both of them are warm. Next color is going to be Viridian. And then I also have emerald green. Let's see if I can open this. I haven't opened this in a long time, so I need some pliers for it. There we go. If you ever have trouble, make sure you grab and have a pliers help around. Sometimes the oil will dry. Now, you can't really find emerald green, the original, anymore. And the reason for that is that it was an arsenic-based pigment, I believe, super, super toxic, and you don't want to paint with it. So emerald green now is just really, I think it's phthalo green mixed with titanium white. Yep, there it is. PY4 zinc white, PW6, and PG, I think it's 36, which is going to be phthalo green. Next we have French ultramarine blue, which is what everyone uses for ultramarine blue. There's almost no way that you're going to get the original ultramarine blue, which would be lapis lazuli. If you did, and you went into a store and someone gave you that and tried to sell it, I would be shocked. It's very hard to find, and about over $100. Next we have cobalt blue. I'm going to grab that in just a minute. It's up in the air on which cobalt blue. I mean, cerulean blue could be technically cobalt blue. It's cobalt stannate. I'm probably going to use this one, which, it's definitely a version of it. But cobalt blue is slightly different than this. It's going to be more towards like a blue, like a royal blue, or what we'd think of as a royal blue. Let me just push that up there. And this one is going to be a little bit more tipping more towards, on the green side, or cyan. Next, we're going to have madder red. The madder colors nobody really uses anymore. I don't even use alizarin. This is a alizarin permanent here, and I'm going to use that. It's actually a pretty high chroma, transparent color, but permanent. The other one had light fast issues. Vermilion is very similar to this color right here. This is cad red medium, or cad red light, sorry. And this is genuine vermilion, typically it's a little bit lower chroma. You can see it a little bit darker. So, you could use CAD red light if you don't have the vermilion, but I'm going to, maybe I'll use both of them. So let's begin here. And at the beginning, I'm just going to put it right here so that I can put this right next to it and then mix on the side. For brushes, generally the Impressionists use bright brushes. Bright just means that they were short, so their marks were short, not long, and there's a little bit less of a spring to the brush. But again, it depends on, that's a good bright brush right there. Depends just on how faithful you want to be with all of this. Sometimes it's interesting to kind of take and interpret it through your own materials as well. Here's a long brush. You can see that one's going to pull the paint a little bit longer. Of course, the rheology of paint is really what's going to help, dictate that as well. So what I'm going to do is probably mix between these brushes. I also brought out this little round brush, probably just to kind of draw at the beginning here. I got my mineral spirits off to the side. I'll put that right over here. And it's all dirty. So you can try to get some clean. A lot of artists will have a cup for the clean mineral spirits and then one for their washing. So let me actually switch that out. There we go. It is a better cup. You can see, you're going to have mixtures. You can see even there's a little bit of a ghost of some color. And now that we've got a clean one, it doesn't, all the sediment goes to the bottom, which is why those are good. All right, let's begin. I don't know how much I'm going to finish here. There's also ivory black, and he did use ivory black from time to time. I think it just depends on the painting. I'm going to try to avoid it, but there may be times in which I have to use it if I want to get like a deep, deep dark color or mark. All right, so he didn't have ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue is like one of my favorite colors. So he didn't have yellow ochre on here either. Again, two colors I love to have on the palette. Reason for that is just that they're pretty low chroma or towards the center of the wheel. And I just find them as pivotal for getting like nice browns. So let's see if I can get a little bit of a brown here at the beginning. That's vermilion. To just kind of draw it on. I just want to generally get it onto the surface here. I wonder, I've worked with, like Max Ginsburg sometimes will just go for it with high chroma color onto the surface. Like I'm going for a neutral. He would just go for it with something else. So I think it's just really hard to tell unless you had somebody in there that painted with Monet all the time. So now I'm just going to flip over to a bright flat brush here and see if I can start to get some of this color. It's going to be pivotal to have this green on there, especially in some of these high chroma areas like the shadow. Now, again, I don't know how much mineral spirits and stuff. Obviously, they didn't have OMS because it's a petroleum distillate. I think it's a little bit ahead of their time to have it. How faithful do we want to be? I'm painting under probably a different light than he had too. So I think, you have to accept a little bit of change. I'm not going to dress up like him either to fit that profile. All right, so let's get in here and we will grab a little bit of yellow and I'm going to just put some of the color in. The interesting thing about the Impressionists I find too is that there's like a drying out of the paint. Again, I think it could be the rheology, because I can kind of pull it when I add a tiny bit of mineral spirits to the paint to kind of wash it over the surface. But I don't think that they're doing that. When you kind of look at some of this information, it feels like it's just, I think there's a kinship to pastels, in which they're caking it on, but the surface is almost dried out. So I mean, I'm almost tempted to go and take and add something to it. So there's titanium, here's flake. Adding something to it could really help as well. And I know, like Rembrandt from time to time would add precipitated chalk. So that could be something if it's accessible to play with. But I don't know if there really is that present, or if it's something that I'm bringing to the table because I know it'll kind of dry the paint out a little bit. There are ways to dry out paint. I'll show you in just a minute. Do something like this. And then if you want to get it to drag a little bit more, you put it on a surface like that, and you can see even on that surface it's gonna drag. So it's gonna suck the oil out of it. So you can see that these marks on here are very, very deliberate. And when I get in here and look, you can see that there's just a beautiful softness to some of these colors. That's the beauty of lead white. Lead white is very, very soft for transitions. Titanium is really going to push something really fast over to where you're hoping to get it, but flake white is just, to get this to where I want it, I need just a touch of that, and you can see that you end up building the body because of it, the body of the paint. So it's part of it. Having wet into wet like this too, it ends up being a little on the tacky side. You can see that you start to kind of pull the strokes. So what I try to do is really think about, see if I can reorient this light a little bit. Really think about just how he's building up the edge here. Again, to these colors that are just so soft. Like vermilion is another color, very, very weak. When you add it, you can see something like that when added to titanium white, and take a little while to get to its destination, but you're going to build body of the paint by doing it that way. I think that's why sometimes the translation, especially with like even the Zorn powder or something like that, where people kind of glibly say, use cad red instead of vermilion. There's a big difference between these two colors. I'll show you. If you take that, and then we just add a little bit of lead to it, it's going to stay pink. You see that? But when you add flake white to vermilion, it's going to take a while for it to get to its destination. So you'll have to build body with the paint, So here we have that, and now with a lot of it. See how it's very pink? You have to add a lot of vermilion to pull this over. It's still not going to get nearly as chromatic as that. So the chroma drop off is much higher. There's a little bit of, even a hint of it maybe in the white. Maybe he had a little left on his brush. Again, all speculation. I'm not some connoisseur or copier of or forger of Monet. That seems a little even more than he did, but you can see to get this really on there, you gotta push it up off the surface. Drag it. Of course, the linen or panel you're using is going to be a part of it as well. So that's when it gets really interesting. So to get a dark, right, ultra is probably one of the ways to do it. But then if we add green to it, Viridian, nice and dark, get it almost black. It looks like that could be what that color is. Let's get it right in there. And then we've got that, right? We've got that alizarin in there. And it could be just a touch of lightening it to really looks like he's really putting it on there. See how that brush mark has to do with the surface. Clean it. See how it pulls it purple now? That's the effect of the alizarin. Probably not as potent. Of course, you could go see how like easy that is to mix. Titanium. I think it's a matter of, to me, the way I think about it is a matter of how much paint you need to mix to get to your destination, and it's a component of this. You know, if you're trying to get this thick Monet-ish color on here, then why not try to use the flake, the lead white, and then to get over the top. Again, it's a quick drag, what he's doing. A little different from the marks I'm making. But they also seem like short marks. Sometimes think like even something like that is the only way to get some of these. All right. Get some of this. titanium white wasn't even almost around. It wasn't available until about 1921. So, I mean, you could use it, of course, for convenience, but it's just a different color and just totally different mixing property. Than flake or creme nuts. And you can see he's almost forced to shift it in color space over here. So he has to push it towards like the lemony side because he can't there we go. He can't get like a light green if you don't have one. So like a light high chroma green would be something like a phthalo, but they didn't have it, so again, you're trying to solve a problem, like why didn't Christopher Columbus have a GPS navigation? That'd be like similar, why didn't they solve the problem with the modern technology that we have now? Well, it wasn't around. So should we try to do it with it? I mean, we could. Of course, there's programs that could figure this out, how to do it with, whatever you hand them. But there's something beautiful about trying to do it ourselves, I think. So then here. There it is. So interesting. I wonder if even pulling it off and then just seeing about... No. Beautiful place to experiment, tell you that. That's what I love about this, is that I learned so much from trying to dissect it, put it back together. I wouldn't want all the answers, really. If somebody was like, let me give you all the notes I have on Monet's paintings, like, I don't know, I guess that'd be fun. Still wouldn't mean I would paint like him, but wouldn't we want to still try to figure it out ourselves, part of it? Isn't the journey really the interesting part? I don't know. I guess. Cerebral question. And then to get the highlight on there. A very, very weak color. Just slap it on. Still can't even slap it on. Look at that. Look at how much you have to put on to get it to sit. Just so different than titanium. Very, very cheap board. Like a cheap canvas board just from Michael's or something. Feels like in the shadow there it gets a little bit like he's adding a little tiny bit of white, like a little bit to get the value. Just chalking it up a little bit chalky, and then green. It's Viridian though. So interesting to juxtapose those two colors. You wouldn't think. Make a mess. Too late for that. Sometimes finding the source of the mess. It's on my hand. That's where you want to be careful, especially if it's the lead, which it is. It's so weak, the color. Could also be that, you know, Monet could have done this over multiple sessions, which is why some of the marks we're trying to get could be things that you can't get in one session. I think if I did a bunch of Monet copies, I'd learn a lot. But of course that would take time. Alright, took a quick little break, coming back to it. So now I'm gonna go back in. You know, I bet you Monet was trying to get a light green here, just couldn't get it. So he's probably going back and forth between shifting it in color space. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just move it towards yellow instead. That is so hard with flake white to do anything. It forces you to put a mark down and live with it. Go. Really does feel like pastels every time I see the work. I know Degas had a fascination with pastel. I think that's why he moved towards it, where you could get that kind of grainy look of pulling the paint. So titanium is definitely, like, to me, an easier one to work with, just because I work with it all the time, to get it where I need it to be. It'll actually, I think, probably increase the chroma touch too. You can see that just easier for me to like opaquely go over the top and kind of drag things. So up to you, again, just how faithful you want to be to it. Plus, the drawing doesn't have to be perfect either. Let me move this over here. Making quite a mess. There's like a touch of lemon yellow. Lemon yellow has a little bit of zinc in it, so it's gonna probably feel a little bit transparent. There we go. You can totally have different brushes here too. See if I get some of that back color. too much. There's like a whole textural component that he has in his painting too. It's so hard to fathom. Take a lot of back and forth to try to get it. But I wonder. Probably the brush could be the canvas. I think this is similar. But there's another component I think that he was getting. Of course, makes Monet. There's the flake. Just a different feel. There it is. There's a good drag. See that? Different feel. Yeah, there you go. Something there. The drag. So much paint too. Love it. Something there. Yeah, I think that's it. The dragging over the top of the flake white is a part of it. There's only so many variables. Anyway, of course I go on all day painting this thing. Not gonna. It's not a forgery, of course. It's more of an exploration. But some of these little marks just pull through. I wonder if it's just an abundance of the flake white in the paint and all the paint. Could be their magic or something that they if they had. It's so weak. So funny. That and then moves into the red. So weak. I think it's part of that dry rushy drag brushstroke. Is that it's these colors. Alright, I think that's good enough for just a quick study. I would definitely be, probably wait another day and then experiment with dragging more dry brush over the top just to see, but I think of like color matching or kind of getting the essence. I think it's pretty good. Of course, not a total copy, like a forgery, but definitely some things to take away from this, which would be that painting with lead white, it's really going to give me that thickened kind of feeling to the painting.